Dan, as I reflect back on the last 48 years, there's only one kind of pivot point that I think is a big mistake. And the way it happened is we were doing a lot of inner meditation work, and we discovered sexuality, romantic relationships, and good, synergistic, healthy sexual romantic relationships are unquestionably the highlight of the last, since we were born, right? There's nothing that compares to that. And having tasted that, I made the mistake of, one, believing that I could keep iterating that in a positive direction, and two, of saying, if this is so much better than meditation, writing, doing art, solitude, etc., if this feels just so much better, the growth is faster, it's more fun, etc., what am I doing with all of this kind of internal focus? And so, I swung hard the other way into, pursuing the ideal relationship. And that, unfortunately, has never materialized, partly because nothing ideal materializes, right? It's an iterative process. But also by turning the attention outward, right? Because we started relatively inward. By turning the attention outwards, it creates a dependency dynamic. In order to have an amazing relationship, we depend on another person to be able and willing to have an amazing relationship. Now, growth is where it's at, right? It doesn't matter where you are, what your starting point, what's fun, what's meaningful in life is making progress. Now, in a relationship, for a relationship to make progress, both people have to participate in the progress. And after an initial kind of sharp curve in growth where you and I were learning a tremendous amount, and so were our partners, what happened was we'd get up to this territory that was well above average. And then our partners would basically say, that's enough. This is the best relationship I've ever had. Wonderful, great. Now let's sit back and enjoy it, i.e. do nothing. Not, why go to therapy? Things are fine. Why read a book? Let's just relax. Why talk about this? Let's just be silent, right? And so, we learned a lot, and then romantic relationships plateaued at the point where other people lost their drive, their interest, their desire to explore and do new things, or lost their ability to. So one of the decisions that you made relatively early on was to prepare for a romantic relationship, learn life skills, start a business, save some money, and then be ready to show up for a relationship. Well, no one that I've met kind of did that preparation in the same way, right? They are still learning life skills, don't have any time, working as an employee for somebody else. aren't that interested in growth, like to go out smoking and drinking as opposed to, reading a book, etc. So prefer going out to parties rather than diving deep one-on-one. So that person that wants to keep growing things has not come along. Now, we discovered this was the most amazing possibility and then got caught in this plateau. Now, you learned something early on, from one of the workshops, which is ask for your 100%. And if someone isn't into it, just go and find another person and another person and another person. So we went through a whole series of, dozens of lovers looking for one person that would want to just keep growing. And we didn't find that, right? And this initial source of pleasure and excitement and accelerated growth became a codependency, right? You need the other in order to grow. In order to participate, to have a relay of energy, you need both, right? And so now you're in a dynamic. We were in a dynamic where we could do all of the work, and people would generally go along with that, right? So that's one way, is you become the battery that charges the other person's battery and your own. So you pay for your own therapy and their therapy. You'd, organize things and think about things and initiate the conversation, and basically all of your energy goes into the relationship, but it's divided into two people. And so you go down, you dissipate your energy, right? Or you leave and start over again, and excitement and growth and, oh, this is wonderful. But see, the trouble is, once you reached a point where you could rapidly get up to here and knew how to do it, that didn't change the relationship world. Nobody else knew how to rapidly get up there and do it, right? They're out there, no doubt, but they're statistically insignificant, right? 1 in 1,000, somewhere in that. And they're not visible, right? There is, so you tried all these different iterative processes of how to filter people to try and see, is there any place in the world? We went to different countries, went to different events, put out different profiles online. Is there any place in the world where there's a high concentration of people that want to put relationship first, put growth ahead of lust, right? That lust has never been the primary thing. People usually have sex or fuck a few times a week. They talk and grow all the time or not at all. And so, you were onto something with the idea of prioritize the conversation, which is continuous. Every day, every night, you're communicating. So look for people capable and willing to communicate excellently of any age, right? And that tended to be older people. So prioritize older people over pert breasts and young bodies. And that's a good thrust. But it is a culture, generally speaking, that wears people down. And so there's not all that many people that are really interested in putting relationship first. So you went over this territory, dozens of times to the point where it got boring for you, but it was still exciting for somebody else. And then there's the thing, is where's someone going to take me to a new territory that I haven't been before, right? And very, very, very short supply in that demographic. Well, I just kept battering away at that, write a book for Thai women, send it out to 5,000 Thai women. Sure, is there anyone in there that really grasped this? Or travel to the Philippines, or, invite hundreds of women to create peak experiences and, take the 1 or 2% that's really excited about that. But it became, you reached a point where you couldn't go further without making people feel overwhelmed and uncomfortable. And you also reached a point where it's kind of like, it's exhausting to scour the globe for these mysterious people that, want to put relationship and growth first. And in that, right, this is the mistake, right? This is the mistake. As things got boring, as growth became stunted, as we hit wall after wall after wall of people being satisfied with what felt like barely getting started, and the lack of preparation, etc., I developed impatience, resentment, frustration, irritation, which are not attractive energies. The frustration, impatience, irritation, etc., lowered the statistics, right? So our best successes were when it was new and wonderful, and for us as well as the other person. And so and then basically I didn't know where to go from here, right? And this was my big frustration for about a decade, right? And so this is the area where I would say that I would do differently, and I'm doing it differently now, but that I would start doing it differently about 7 years ago, right? So this is a good kind of pivot point. The mistake was, after experiencing some initial success turning outward, was to give up a lot of the inner resources and practices in order to pursue greener pastures out there. And this fortune often favors on, the new player of a game, et cetera, et cetera. And so we were blessed and cursed with several relationships that, much older and experienced women said were probably the best that's out there. Right? They said, I haven't been able to find in 50, 60 years anything like this in my whole life, right? So this is the best that I've experienced in communication and growth, et cetera. And they were satisfied with that, right? But that also is a curse then, right? Because the joy is always in the growing and the becoming. It's in the growing and the becoming. So it's so much fun to watch another person grow and reach all of their potential. It's a joy, right? And it's a joy to synergize, like when you put two charged batteries together, where both people bring equal logistics and equal skill, right? And equal enthusiasm. It's beautiful energy, enthusiasm, skill, right? Logistics, energy, time, money, natural resources to create something. Then you have a synergy. It's not just a doubling, it's a tripling for both people, right? But when you come together and the logistics aren't there, the enthusiasm isn't there, the fear of, I've never done this before is there, and now it takes about 6 months to kind of walk someone through this territory. And there isn't that much enthusiasm, there's hesitancy, that gets tiring, right? That's half charge. So what I would say is do understand that life in that sense is a casino. And the odds are somewhere between 100 to 1 to 1,000 to 1 against that kind of relationship. Right? Roughly 1 in 1,000 people can do it, has moderate amount of resources available to be an equal partner in doing something like that. To travel for 3 months, to reorganize a life around what's flowing in the relationship, right? So playing the odds from a state of irritation and impatience didn't work, has not worked very well. So what I've been doing, more recently is developing inner wealth. And the way I would put it is that, a really great growing romantic sexual relationship is 300% faster, more enjoyable, more dimensional than growing and developing inner work alone, statistically speaking. But it's about 100 times harder to locate people able and willing to do that. 100 times harder. So it actually ends up being a net negative. And then it's frustrating to be independent. Here's another date that has no idea what makes them feel loved and supported. Or here's another date that, never bothered to read about love languages. And here's another person that wants to talk about minutia and doesn't really have a clear sense of where they're going. And those, relative to what they could be, are disappointments. However, inner growth, meditation, writing a book, reading a book, practicing breath work, doing a painting, even though it's 1/3 the dimensionality and intensity and excitement of a terrific romantic relationship, it's a steady win that is yields statistically about 10 times more well-being. Plus, because it nourishes us, because it nourishes you, it gives you the ability to bypass, the predominant energy of impatience. Like you and I have never lied and don't enjoy lying and don't like performing. So it put us in a difficult place when we were irritated, disappointed, impatient. Like, really? This is, you want a great relationship and this is how you've prepared or haven't prepared for that? I mean, that sucks, right? Because they're going to fail. And we're going to fail trying to succeed with them, right, in that state. And so, just scowling, frowning, being impatient, that's also, it's not a generative energy. It's no fun for me or the other person. So I would say that, in the same way that gambling is exciting, but you don't go to Vegas to make money, right? You've got a 99% chance if you place 100 bets in Vegas of coming away poorer than when you went in. And the same is true in the dating pools, right? You've got a probably 90% chance of coming away poorer if you're aiming for excellence. You go on 10 dates, and if you compare those 10 dates with what you could have done reliably with your own time, doing 10 paintings or writing 10 chapters in a book or whatever. Those are consistently energizing and delightful and fun. So that's where I would say pivot the attention. Work more inward, and then seize those minority opportunities when they are available. And the other thing that I would say is that you suffer from attachment trauma from early childhood. And when you look to the outer world to bring about a sense of well-being, it compounds that attachment dependency, that attachment trauma. And so, I would say that you kind of leapt out of yourself to explore the joys of romantic relationship. But, in doing so while neglecting your inner work for a period of time, became dependent on the outer world. So when you're dependent for your well-being on the outer world in a statistically poor location, like there are plenty of places and little microcultures in the world where the outer world is statistically vibrant, like 7 out of 10 encounters are nourishing, but that's not the American culture, right? So so doing it over again, I would say focus on daily meditation, whether it feels as exciting as romantic relationship is not, whether you feel you need it or not. Develop the discipline of holding all of yourself so that whether to interact with someone on a given day, on a given week, etc., is a preference, not I'm going to feel like shit and disappointed if this doesn't happen. Because the odds are not good enough to lean too hard into that territory in a dependent way. And I think you'll do great if you keep that in mind, and then also just understand that all the joy in life comes from the empathic brain, right? Empathy, celebrating another person's success, celebrating another, you've always enjoyed the pleasure you bring to a lover, emotionally and physically, sensually, and that's empathy. All the joy is in that territory. Now, the culture as a whole is 60 to 70% sociopathic, meaning 60 to 70% of what's on people's minds and what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing is out of fear and protection, managing pain, managing hurt, managing fear of the future, fear of the past repeating, and then that's covered with a veneer of course, trying to look good and pretend that it's all, everything's great, which is another layer of protection. In other words, there's an effort to manage pain and protect against pain, and then there's a secondary effort to hide that activity, to look better, basically. That's a terribly inefficient environment in which to focus empathy outward. But if you focus empathy inward and understand that 30% of the time you can deal with someone or a situation where they are able and willing to engage empathically in a real way, not just the veneer, well, then that suggests that, 70% of the time your joy will come from inner experience and meditation, and 30% of the time it will come out there. And if you steer along those lines, and understand those statistics, you will be a much happier man.